Sunlight poured through the sheer curtains of the hotel suite, warming my face as I sat motionless in front of the vanity mirror. My reflection stared back, hollow-eyed despite the careful makeup application. 29 years old, veterinarian, about to marry a man I respected but didn't love. The white lace gown clung to my frame, elegant and suffocating in equal measure. "You look stunning," my maid of honor said, adjusting the cathedral veil. Her voice seemed to come from underwater. I forced a smile. "Thank you. 8 weeks. That's how long I'd been carrying this secret. The positive pregnancy test tucked in my suitcase for the honeymoon reveal felt like a stone in my chest. Derek didn't want children naturally. His family carried genetic conditions he refused to pass down. The insemination with an anonymous donor had been clinical, practical. Everything our relationship was built on. Safe, predictable, utterly devoid of passion. The Fairmont Copley Plaza hummed with activity below. 150 guests gathered in the garden terrace, their chatter drifting up through the open window. Derek's law partners, my veterinary colleagues, families who thought we made perfect sense together. Maybe we did, on paper. 2 professionals building a stable future. No messy emotions, no risks. My hand drifted to my abdomen, still flat beneath the gown's corset. A boy or girl? Would they have my green eyes or the unknown donor's features? The clinic had provided minimal information, just health screenings and basic physical traits. Responsible reproduction, they'd called it. "Rachel, it's time." My mother appeared in the doorway, tears already forming. She'd been thrilled about this wedding, relieved her daughter was finally settling down after years focused solely on exotic animal rehabilitation. I stood, the gown's train whispering across hardwood. My legs felt disconnected from my body as we descended the curved staircase. Hotel staff smiled, offering congratulations I barely registered. Derek waited somewhere beyond those French doors, probably checking his watch, punctual to a fault, my almost husband. The processional music began. Wagner, traditional and expected. I clutched the bouquet of white roses too tightly, their thorns pressing through the wrapping. 1 breath, 2. Then I stepped into the garden. The May afternoon was perfect. Cloudless sky, gentle breeze carrying the scent of flowering trees lining the terrace. Guest faces turned toward me, cameras raised. Derek stood at the altar in his tailored tuxedo, blonde hair perfectly styled, expression proud and satisfied. This was a good merger, his posture said. Sensible. I walked the aisle alone, having insisted on that small rebellion. Each step felt predetermined, my life following a script I hadn't written but couldn't escape. The officiant smiled warmly. Derek reached for my hand, his touch cool and dry. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began. I tried to focus on the words, on the commitment I was about to make. Derek squeezed my fingers, mistaking my trembling for emotion. Maybe it was, just not the kind he imagined. "If anyone objects to this union..." The roar of engines cut through the ceremony. 3 black Escalades crashed through the garden's side gate, tires tearing gouges in the manicured lawn. Screams erupted from the guests. Derek's grip tightened painfully as security guards rushed forward, only to freeze when car doors opened. Men in dark suits emerged, moving with military precision. Not rushed, not panicked, controlled. 10 of them formed a corridor, and then he stepped out. Tall, easily 6'2", with black hair and eyes so dark they absorbed light. His presence hit like a physical force, silencing the chaos. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my gown, cut to emphasize broad shoulders and a frame built for violence. A thin scar bisected his left eyebrow, the only flaw in otherwise devastating features. He looked like he'd been carved from marble by an angry god, and he was looking directly at me. Rachel Morgan. His voice carried across the terrace, accented with something Mediterranean. Italian, maybe. Each word pronounced with careful precision. "Step away from him." Derek moved in front of me, finally finding his voice. "What the hell is this?" "Security." The hotel's guards had their hands on their weapons but didn't draw. Something about these men, their stillness, their readiness, made even armed professionals hesitate. The stranger kept walking, his men flanking him. Guests scattered. Someone sobbed, but he never broke eye contact with me. My heart slammed against my ribs. Fear, and something else I couldn't name, flooding my system. "You don't know me," he said, stopping 5 feet away. "But you're carrying my child." The world tilted. Derek's hand fell from mine. The officiant backed up, clutching his Bible. My mother gasped from somewhere in the crowd. "That's insane," I managed, voice barely audible. "I've never seen you before in my life. Riverside Fertility Clinic, 8 weeks ago." He reached inside his jacket. 2 of his men shifted, hands visible and empty to show he wasn't pulling a weapon. He withdrew an envelope, extended it toward me. "There was an error, not an accident. Your procedure used my genetic material. The clinic is compromised, connected to people who want to hurt me. Which means you're in danger. Right now." Derek exploded. "This is harassment. You're threatening her. I'm saving her." Those dark eyes finally left mine, fixing on Derek with something close to pity. "You can't protect her from what's coming." "I can." "Rachel, get behind me," Derek ordered, but his voice wavered. He was a litigator, comfortable in courtrooms, not facing down men who radiated lethal capability. I couldn't move, couldn't process. My baby, the tiny cluster of cells I'd already started loving, belonged to this stranger? Impossible. The clinic had protocols, safeguards. "I don't believe you," I said, but my voice cracked. His jaw tightened. "You don't have time to believe me. Look." He pointed past the garden wall. A black sedan I hadn't noticed before sat idling on the street beyond. Its windows were tinted, but I felt eyes watching, predatory and patient. "They've been following you for 3 weeks, he said. "Waiting for today. Isolated location, minimal security during your honeymoon. You would have disappeared, and your fiancé would have spent years searching for a body he'd never find. You're insane." But my skin prickled. Had I been followed? Those odd moments of feeling watched while grocery shopping. The car that seemed to appear behind mine too often. I'd dismissed it as wedding stress. The stranger's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, expression hardening. "We're out of time." Gunfire shattered the afternoon. The sedan's door opened and muzzle flashes sparked. Guests dropped to the ground screaming. Derek stumbled backward, pulling me with him. The stranger moved faster, his hand clamping around my wrist with bruising force. He hauled me against his chest, his body a wall between me and the bullets I heard whizzing past. "Move," he barked at his men. They formed a protective shell, returning fire with weapons that appeared in their hands like magic. Professional, economical shots. The sedan's windshield spiderwebbed. Someone inside shouted in a language I didn't recognize. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. My ears rang from the gunfire. The stranger's arm was steel around my waist, dragging me toward his vehicle. I tried to resist, heels skidding on grass. "Let me go." "Your choice." His voice was hard at my ear. "Come with me and live, or stay here and watch everyone you love die in the crossfire. Decide now." Derek lay on the ground, covered by an overturned table, face white with terror. My mother crouched behind a planter, hands over her head. Another burst of gunfire sent chips of stone flying from the hotel's facade. A waiter crumpled, clutching his shoulder. The stranger wasn't asking. He was stating facts with the certainty of someone who'd seen this play out before. I stopped fighting. He lifted me effortlessly, my gown tangling around my legs as he carried me to the Escalade. The door was already open. He placed me inside with surprising gentleness, then slid in beside me, barking orders in Italian. The door slammed. The vehicle surged forward. Through the window, I watched my wedding dissolve into chaos. Derek staggering to his feet. My mother searching the crowd, probably for me. The sedan peeling away, pursued by 2 of the stranger's vehicles. The Fairmont's garden, a war zone. My veil caught on a chair like a ghost. "Seatbelt," the stranger said, his voice returning to that controlled calm. I stared at him. My hands shook too badly to manage the buckle. He reached across, his movements efficient and impersonal, clicking it into place. His cologne was subtle, expensive. Leather and something darker. His knuckles were scarred. "Who are you?" I whispered. He met my eyes, and I saw something flicker in their depths. Regret, maybe, or resignation. Luca Valentasi. He leaned back, blood seeping through his sleeve where a bullet had grazed him. He didn't seem to notice. And for the next few months, you belong to me. The Escalade merged into traffic, and my old life disappeared behind us. I woke to unfamiliar silence. No traffic sounds, no city hum. Just birds and the distant whisper of wind through trees. For a moment, I floated in confusion before memory crashed down. The wedding. Gunfire. Luca Valentasi dragging me into his vehicle while my life exploded behind me. I shot upright in bed, heart hammering. The room around me was beautiful and wrong. Cream walls, hardwood floors gleaming with morning light, furniture that looked antique and expensive. A window showed manicured gardens and high stone walls topped with cameras. My wedding gown lay draped over a chair, streaked with grass stains and smelling of gunpowder. I was still wearing the slip underneath, nothing else. Someone had removed my shoes, unhooked the corset. Panic spiked through my chest as I checked. But the slip was intact, undisturbed. Small mercies. The door was solid oak with an old-fashioned handle. I tried it. Locked, of course. I crossed to the window, tested it. Also locked. And the glass felt too thick to be normal. Reinforced, probably bulletproof. The garden below was empty except for a man in a dark suit walking the perimeter speaking into a radio. Security. Prison guards by another name. Breathe. I forced air into my lungs, pressing my palms flat against the cool glass. 8 weeks pregnant, kidnapped by a stranger claiming the baby was his, trapped in a mansion that looked like something from a colonial postcard. This wasn't real. Couldn't be. But the dull ache in my wrist where he'd gripped me said otherwise. The ringing still faint in my ears from gunfire. The absence of my engagement ring, lost somewhere in the chaos. A soft knock preceded the lock clicking open. A woman entered, middle-aged with steel-gray hair pulled back severely. She carried a tray, her expression neutral but not unkind. "Breakfast," she said, setting it on the dresser. Coffee, toast, fruit, yogurt. My stomach churned at the sight. "Bathroom is through there." She nodded to a door I'd missed. "Fresh clothes in the closet, your size. Mr. Valentasi will see you when you're ready." "I'm not ready," I said, voice hoarse. "I want to leave." Something flickered in her eyes. "Pity, maybe. Ring the bell when you want to come down." She indicated a small brass bell on the nightstand. "Someone will escort you." She left before I could respond. The lock engaged with a soft snick. I didn't touch the food. Instead, I explored my cage systematically. The bathroom was marble and chrome, stocked with unopened toiletries. The closet held clothes in my exact size, jeans, sweaters, practical shoes. Someone had done their homework. The thought made my skin crawl. How long had Luca Valentasi been watching me? Planning this? I dressed mechanically, choosing jeans and a loose sweater that hid my still flat stomach. Splashed water on my face, tried to tame my hair. The woman in the mirror looked haunted. Good. She should be. The bell stayed silent. I wouldn't summon my captors like a trained animal. An hour passed. 2. My defiance felt increasingly stupid as hunger gnawed at my stomach and the baby I carried. Finally, I rang the bell once, sharp and angry. A different guard appeared, younger, but just as silent. He gestured for me to follow, staying 2 steps behind as we descended a curved staircase. The house was stunning. All high ceilings and understated wealth. Original art on the walls, Turkish rugs muffling our footsteps. Old money or very good taste paired with new money. We stopped at double doors. The guard knocked, waited for a response, then opened them and stepped back. Luca Valentasi stood behind a massive desk in what was clearly a library. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, filled with leather-bound volumes. A 4th wall was windows overlooking the garden, sunshine streaming through to illuminate him like some Renaissance painting. He'd changed into casual clothes, dark jeans and a black shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows. The bandage on his forearm was the only sign of yesterday's violence. "Sit." He indicated a leather chair across from the desk. I stayed standing. "I want to go home." "You don't have a home anymore." He opened a folder, began laying out photographs on the desk with methodical precision. The moment I took you from that wedding, you became a target. Going back puts everyone you know at risk. You did this. The words burst out, sharp with rage. You destroyed my wedding, terrified my family. You're the threat here. No. He looked up, those dark eyes pinning me in place. I'm the solution to a problem you didn't know existed. Come here. Look. I didn't want to obey. Didn't want to step closer to this man who radiated danger like heat from a flame. But something in his voice, a resignation, made me move. The photographs were surveillance images. Me leaving my apartment, walking through Boston Common, entering the veterinary clinic where I worked. And in every single photo, circled in red, was a man. Different clothes, different positions, but the same face. Sharp features, light eyes, watching me. His name is Ardit Krasniki, Luka said. Albanian organized crime. He's been tracking you for 3 weeks. My throat went dry. I picked up one photo, dated April 23rd. I remembered that day, stopping for coffee before work. The feeling of eyes on my back. Why? I whispered. Luka pulled out another folder, thicker. He opened it, revealing medical documents. Riverside Fertility Clinic letterhead. My name on patient forms. And then, genetic testing results that made my vision blur. 3 years ago, I stored genetic material at Riverside, he said, voice flat and clinical. Standard procedure before high-risk operations in my line of work. The clinic's director, Dr. Arben Krasniki, is Ardit's cousin. They accessed my samples, identified me. When you came in for your procedure 6 months ago, they saw an opportunity. I sank into the chair, legs suddenly unable to hold me. They switched the samples. On purpose. Yes. He slid the genetic test across. 99.9% probability of paternity, creating a vulnerability they could exploit. A child of mine would be valuable leverage. The room spun. My baby, the miracle I'd planned and hoped for, was a weapon. A pawn in some criminal game I didn't understand. The Krasnikis want territory I control, Luka continued, relentless as a surgeon cutting. Shipping routes through Boston Harbor. They've been escalating for months. This was their play, create a hostage before you even knew you were one. Wait until the pregnancy progressed past the fragile first trimester. Then take you. Use the child to force me to surrender what they want, or watch my son or daughter die slowly. Bile rose in my throat. You're lying. Making this up to justify kidnapping me. He turned his laptop around. Security footage played. Timestamp showing 2 weeks ago. The exterior of Riverside Fertility Clinic. A man entering through a side door at 2 a.m., leaving 20 minutes later with a box. Luka froze the frame. Zoomed in. The face was clear. Ardit Krasniki. He's been collecting files, Luka said. Patient records. Probably selling them, using them for blackmail. Your file was accessed 16 times in the past month. I thought I might vomit. Why didn't you go to the police? His laugh was bitter and short. The police can't protect you from this. These people kill cops as easily as anyone else. And frankly, my hands aren't clean enough to invite that kind of scrutiny. So you're a criminal too. Statement, not question. Yes. No shame, no apology. But I don't hurt civilians. I don't use children as weapons. And I don't let people take what's mine. I'm not yours. His gaze dropped to my stomach, still flat beneath the sweater. The child is. Biologically, legally, once I prove paternity. Which means you are, until this situation is resolved. I wanted to scream. To throw something at his arrogant face. I didn't choose this. Any of this. Neither did I. For the first time, something cracked in his armor. Exhaustion, maybe. Or frustration. You think I wanted a child? In my world? I've spent my entire life avoiding exactly this vulnerability. Then let me go. Get an abortion. Disappear. Whatever you want. It's too late. He closed the folders, stacked them with precise movements. They know about you. Know you're pregnant. Even if you terminated, they'd assume I had the child hidden somewhere. You'd never be safe. The trap closed around me, suffocating. What do you want from me? Stay here. Let me protect you until I can neutralize the Krasniki operation. After that, we'll figure out custody arrangements, support, whatever you need." He stood, moving to the window. "You'll have everything you require. Medical care, books, entertainment, freedom within the grounds. But you can't leave, and you can't contact anyone outside. For their safety and yours. That's imprisonment. That's survival." He turned back, and the light behind him made his face unreadable. "I know this is unfair. You're an innocent caught in a war you didn't start. But I will keep you alive, Rachel Morgan. Whether you cooperate or fight me every step of the way." We stared at each other across the expensive rug, my hands clenched into fists, nails biting crescents into my palms. "I hate you," I said. "I know." He moved to the door, opened it. The guard waited outside. "Your meals will be brought to your room, or you can join me if you prefer. Test the limits. Try to escape if you need to. You'll find this house is very secure. But don't mistake my protection for cruelty. I'm trying to save your life." He left before I could respond. The guard gestured for me to precede him. I walked back to my beautiful prison, each step heavy with the weight of my shattered future. 3 days passed in a haze of fury and disbelief. I ate because the baby needed it, slept because exhaustion finally won, and tested every window, every door, every potential weakness in my cage. There were none. Luca Valentasi had thought of everything. 2 weeks felt like 2 years. I'd mapped every inch of my confinement, cataloged every guard rotation, memorized the pattern of Luca's movements through the house. He worked in his study most mornings, took calls in Italian or sometimes Albanian on the terrace in the afternoons. Always within the property. Always armed, though he tried to hide it. We maintained a cold war of silence. I refused to eat with him, taking meals in my room instead. Refused to acknowledge his existence when we passed in hallways. He didn't push, didn't force interaction. Just watched me with those unreadable dark eyes, tracking my movements like I was a skittish animal he needed to gentle. The morning sickness had gotten worse. I spent the 10th day mostly in the bathroom, too sick to maintain my defiance. The gray-haired woman, whose name I'd learned was Mrs. Russo, brought ginger tea and crackers without being asked. Small kindness in captivity. By the 14th night, insomnia had become my constant companion. I paced my room at 2 a.m., restless and angry and terrified in equal measure. The baby was real, growing inside me despite the nightmare circumstances. 9 weeks now. In 3 weeks, I'd hear the heartbeat, if I was still alive. That thought kept me awake more than anything. Luca claimed protection. But what if he was wrong? What if the Krasnikis found this place? A sound shattered my spiraling thoughts. Distant, but distinct. Glass breaking. Shouts. Then the sharp crack of gunfire. My blood turned to ice. More shots. Closer now. Running footsteps in the hallway. I backed away from my door, searching frantically for anything resembling a weapon. The desk chair, maybe. I grabbed it, positioned myself in the corner farthest from the window. The lock clicked. I raised the chair, ready to swing at whoever entered. Luca burst through, gun in hand, shirt splattered with blood. Not his. I registered with strange detachment. His eyes swept the room, landed on me. With me. Now. What's happening? They found us. He crossed the space in 3 strides, grabbed my wrist. The chair clattered from my grip. Basement. Move. Another explosion rocked the house, shaking the floor beneath my feet. Luca yanked me into the hallway where 2 guards stood with automatic weapons, scanning both directions with military precision. They formed up around us, one ahead and one behind, as Luca pulled me toward a door I'd thought was a closet. He opened it to reveal stairs descending into darkness. Gunfire echoed from downstairs, closer, mixed with shouting in that same language I didn't understand. Albanian, probably. The Krasnikis had come. We descended quickly, my bare feet slapping against concrete. The basement was reinforced, I realized. Steel-lined walls, heavy door at the bottom, a panic room. Luca shoved me inside. The space was maybe 10 by 12, lined with monitors showing security feeds of the house and grounds. I watched in horror as men in dark tactical gear swarmed the garden, engaging with Luca's people. Muzzle flashes lit up the night like deadly fireflies. How many? One of the guards asked, weapon trained on the door we just entered through. At least 12, Luca replied, checking his gun's magazine. Maybe more. Matteo, you stay with her. Radio if anything changes. You're going back out there? The words escaped before I could stop them. He looked at me, and something flickered across his face. It's my house. My people. I don't hide while they fight. You'll get killed. Worried about me, Dr. Morgan? The ghost of dark humor touched his mouth. I've survived worse. I'm worried about being trapped in a basement if you die and they get in. Practical. Cold. Safer than admitting the spike of genuine fear I'd felt seeing him covered in blood. His expression hardened. They won't get through Matteo. And if somehow they do, there's a tunnel. Far corner, behind the shelf unit. It leads to a garage 3 blocks away. Keys are in the lockbox. Code is your birthday. That stopped me. How do you know my birthday? I know everything about you. He moved to the door, paused. Stay quiet. Stay alive. We'll talk when this is over. Then he was gone. Back up into the chaos. The guard, Matteo, locked the door behind him and took position in front of it. Weapon ready. His face was young, maybe 25, but his hands were steady. I sank onto the bench against the wall, pulling my knees to my chest. On the monitors, I watched hell unfold. Bodies fell on both sides. Luca appeared on one screen, moving through the first floor with lethal efficiency. He fired twice, dropped an attacker, then disappeared around a corner. Minutes crawled by like hours. The gunfire grew sporadic, then stopped entirely. Eerie silence pressed down on us. Matteo's jaw was tight, finger resting alongside his trigger guard. Is it over? I whispered. Don't know. The radio crackled. Luca's voice, rough and breathless. Matteo. Status. Secure. She's safe. Keep her there until I give the all clear. We're sweeping for stragglers. 20 more minutes passed before the door lock beeped and opened. Luca descended, now wearing a different shirt. Clean. Black. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. He'd been hurt, even if he was hiding it. They're gone, he said. Dead or retreated. House is secure. I stood on shaking legs. How many? Dead? His voice was flat. 8 of theirs. 2 of mine wounded. None killed. 8 people. Dead. Because of me. Because of a baby I hadn't even asked for. I need air, I managed. Not yet. Cleanup crew needs to work. Give them an hour. I need air now. My voice rose, hysteria creeping in at the edges. I need out of this box. Something in my tone must have registered. Luca nodded to Matteo, who stepped aside. First floor only. Stay away from windows. I pushed past him, up the stairs, emerging into a house transformed. Bullet holes pocked the walls. Blood streaked the hardwood. Broken glass crunched under my feet as I stumbled toward the terrace doors, needing open space, needing sky. Luca followed but kept distance, letting me rip the doors open and stumble outside. The garden smelled of gunpowder and copper. I made it 3 steps before my legs gave out. I sank to the stone patio, pulling my knees up, trying to breathe through the panic. He sat beside me, not touching, just present. We stayed like that as dawn began to lighten the eastern sky. Pink and gold touched the clouds, indifferent to the violence below. This is your life, I said finally. Death and blood and never feeling safe. Yes, and you brought a child into it. His hands clenched. I didn't bring anything. This was done to both of us. I turned to look at him. Really look. He was 35. I'd learned from documents I'd found in his study during my explorations. Successful, powerful, feared, and utterly alone in a fortress he'd built against a world that wanted him dead. How do you live like this? I asked. You learn not to feel too much, not to care too deeply. Keep everyone at arm's length. He met my eyes. Safer that way. That sounds like hell. It is. He looked away, jaw working. I never wanted to bring someone else into it, especially not an innocent, especially not a child. The admission felt raw, honest in a way nothing else between us had been. I thought about Derek, safe in his courtroom battles. about my quiet life rehabilitating injured raptors and teaching veterinary students. Normal problems, normal dangers. They really would have killed me, I said softly, if you hadn't taken me first. Yes, you and the baby. Without hesitation, I wrapped my arms around my stomach, protective and automatic. I don't want this. I know. His voice carried infinite tiredness. But wanting doesn't change what is. We sat in silence as the sun rose fully, burning away the shadows. Men in coveralls arrived, began the grim work of disposal and repair. Luca finally stood, offered me his hand. I looked at it for a long moment. Taking it felt like acceptance, like admitting my life had fundamentally changed and wouldn't change back. But my legs were still shaky, and his hand was steady. I took it. He pulled me up gently, released me the moment I had balance. Mrs. Russo will bring breakfast to the library, he said. We need to talk about next steps. They know this location now. We'll need to relocate. Another prison? Bitterness leaked through. Another fortress. He started toward the house, paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. You deserved better than this. I followed him inside, stepping over bloodstains being scrubbed away by people who'd clearly done this before. In the library, morning light poured through undamaged windows. Books lined the walls, unchanged and unchanging. I sank into the leather chair across from his desk, exhausted down to my bones. Mrs. Russo appeared with coffee and pastries. I took the coffee gratefully, let the warmth seep into my cold hands. Luca sat behind his desk, pulling up information on his laptop. There's a property in the Seaport district, he began. High-rise, better security. We can move this afternoon. Okay. The word felt hollow. He looked up, surprised by my compliance. I was surprised too, but the attack had shifted something fundamental in my understanding. Luca was a criminal, yes. A killer, probably. But he'd risked his life fighting while he could have run. His people had died protecting me. A stranger carrying cargo they'd never asked for either. I need to understand something, I said. The Krasnikis. Why is this territory so important? He studied me for a moment, deciding something. Then he began to explain, and for the first time, I listened without my walls up, because staying ignorant wasn't protecting me. It was just leaving me blind in a war I was trapped in, whether I accepted it or not. By the time Mrs. Russo returned to clear breakfast, I'd learned more about Boston's criminal underworld than I'd ever wanted to know. And I'd made a decision. I couldn't escape this. But maybe, if I stopped fighting and started learning, I could survive it. 4 weeks since my wedding day exploded into violence and captivity. The Seaport penthouse was nothing like the Brookline mansion. All steel and glass, modern art on white walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor. 23rd floor. Impossible to reach without passing through security that rivaled airport checkpoints. A gilded cage with better views. I'd stopped fighting the guards who shadowed me. Stopped testing doors I knew were locked. The fury that had sustained me those first weeks had burned down to something quieter but deeper. Not acceptance, exactly. More like strategic retreat, while I figured out how to exist in this impossible situation. Luca and I had developed an unspoken routine. Breakfast together in the dining room, him with his espresso and newspaper, me with herbal tea and whatever I could stomach through morning sickness. Few words exchanged, but the silence had shifted from hostile to something almost companionable. He asked about my health. I answered honestly. Small civilities in captivity. This morning he set down his coffee and slid an envelope across the glass table. Dr. Lauren Foster. She's coming this afternoon for your 12-week appointment. I took the envelope, found a medical file inside. Credentials for an obstetrician, impressive resume, patient reviews. You hired her. I vetted her thoroughly. Former Mass General, now private practice. Discreet, skilled, and she owes me a favor. He caught my expression. A legitimate favor. I funded her clinic 3 years ago when banks wouldn't loan to her. She's a good person, Rachel. The use of my first name still felt strange. He'd been careful with it, using it sparingly like something breakable. I'd noticed I'd started thinking of him as Luca rather than Valentasi or my captor. Small shift. Seismic implications. Will you be there? I asked. Something flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty, rare on him. Do you want me there? I considered. A month ago, the answer would have been an immediate no. Now, the thought of hearing the heartbeat alone felt wrong. This baby connected us whether we wanted it or not. Biology didn't care about circumstances. Yes, I said quietly. His shoulders relaxed fractionally. Then I'll be there. Dr. Foster arrived at 2 p.m. A woman in her early 40s with warm brown eyes and an efficiency that put me at ease immediately. Luca had converted one of the spare bedrooms into a medical suite, complete with an ultrasound machine that probably cost more than most people's cars. Rachel Morgan. She shook my hand, grip firm and professional. Luca tells me you've had quite the month. I glanced at him where he stood near the door, arms crossed. That's one way to put it. Well, let's make sure baby is doing well despite the stress. She gestured to the examination table. Hop up. We'll start with basics and then take a look. The exam was thorough. Blood pressure slightly elevated, but not concerning given circumstances. Weight steady. She asked questions about symptoms, diet, sleep patterns. Normal medical care in deeply abnormal circumstances. Everything looks good so far, Dr. Foster said, prepping the ultrasound. This will be cold. The gel hit my abdomen and I flinched. She pressed the transducer below my navel, angling it with practiced precision. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy gray and black shapes I couldn't decipher. Then she adjusted something, and suddenly I could see it. Tiny form, impossibly small, moving with jerky energy. Head, body, little limbs that seemed to wave at us, and the flicker in the center, rapid and strong. There's the heartbeat, Dr. Foster said, turning up the volume. The sound filled the room. Quick rhythm like horses galloping, thrumming with life. My breath caught. That was real. A person, growing inside me despite everything. Despite clinic conspiracies and mafia wars, and a father I'd met 4 weeks ago. I looked at Luca. He'd moved closer without my noticing, standing at my shoulder, eyes locked on the screen. His expression was unguarded for once, showing something raw and vulnerable. Wonder, maybe. Or fear, possibly both. Strong heartbeat, Dr. Foster continued, measuring things on the screen with practiced clicks. Good growth, right on track for 12 weeks. Crown to rump length is right where we want it. She took several images, the machine printing them out with soft mechanical sounds. Then she handed me tissues to wipe off the gel and gave us privacy while I rearranged my clothes. Luca held one of the ultrasound photos, staring at it like he could decode the universe from those grainy shapes. That's real, he said, voice rough. I knew intellectually, but seeing it, yeah. I slid off the table, took the photo from his hand. The baby looked like an alien, all head and tiny body. Beautiful and terrifying. 12 weeks. 3 more months until I'm visibly pregnant. Dr. Foster will come weekly. He cleared his throat, settling back into business mode. Anything you need, tell me. Different food, supplements, books about pregnancy. Whatever helps. I studied him. This man who'd kidnapped me and protected me in equal measure. Why do you care so much? You said yourself you never wanted children. I didn't. He met my eyes. And that vulnerability was still there beneath the surface. My father raised me to be a weapon. No softness, no weakness. Children were liabilities in this world. I believed that. And now? Now there's a heartbeat that exists because of me. A person who didn't choose any of this. His jaw tightened. I won't be my father. This child will know safety, stability. Even if I have to burn my entire world down to provide it. The intensity in his voice sent shivers down my spine. Not from fear, but from recognition. I'd seen that same fierce protectiveness in mother raptors defending nests, in wolves circling their pack's young. Primal and absolute. Luca. His name felt strange on my tongue. If we're doing this, really doing this together, I need more than protection. I need purpose. What do you mean? I'm a veterinarian. I've spent 7 years learning to help animals, and now I sit in this apartment doing nothing while my career disappears. I gestured at the windows, the city beyond. Let me work remotely. Consultations, case reviews, research, something. He considered, and I could see him calculating risks. Controlled access, secure network, no location data, no personal details shared. I can work with that. I'll have my tech people set it up. He paused. There's something else. I'm planning an operation, retrieving information from Riverside Fertility, the clinic where this started. I need building layouts, security patterns. You were a patient there for months. My pulse quickened. You want me to help you rob the place? I want you to guide my team remotely. Your knowledge of the facility could cut operation time in half, reduce risk to my people. His gaze was steady. But only if you're willing. I won't force this. It should have felt like manipulation, drawing me into his world. But I thought about Dr. Arbin Kresnicki, the man who'd deliberately switched genetic samples and turned my pregnancy into a weapon, about how many other people he'd hurt with his schemes. What happens to the clinic after? Evidence goes to federal contacts. The place gets shut down. Kresnicki goes to prison for fraud and racketeering. Luca's voice went cold. He'll never practice medicine again. Justice. Criminal style. Not what I'd choose, but better than nothing. I'll help, I said, on one condition. No one gets hurt who doesn't need to be hurt. Security guards, cleaning staff, innocent people. They walk away. Agreed. He extended his hand, formal and strange. Partners, then. At least for this. I shook it, his grip warm and firm. Partners. The word felt dangerous and right simultaneously. 2 weeks passed after the attack, and the next 3 days were strange. Luca's tech specialist, a nervous man named Dmitri, set up secure systems for me to access veterinary databases and consult on cases remotely. Within hours, I was reviewing radiographs from the Franklin Park Zoo, advising on treatment for a clouded leopard with suspected pneumonia. My brain engaged in ways it hadn't since the wedding, solving problems that mattered. And in the evenings, Luca and I sat in his office, me sketching layout maps of Riverside Fertility from memory, while he asked detailed questions. Where were the servers? Which doors had card readers versus keypads? Guard rotations, blind spots in camera coverage, anything I could remember. You have a good memory, he said, studying my drawings. Spatial memory comes with the veterinary territory. Need to remember anatomical structures, surgical approaches. I added another notation. The server room is behind a fake wall in the records office. I saw them accessing it once when I was waiting for a consultation. That's exactly the kind of detail that matters. He made notes on his tablet, cross-referencing with building plans his people had acquired. We go in 3 nights from now. Thursday, minimal staff, maximum darkness. I want to listen in. The words came out before I'd fully thought them through. Not in the field, but audio feed. I'll be more useful if I can hear what your team is encountering in real time. He hesitated, protective instinct clearly warring with tactical sense. Finally, he nodded. Audio only. You stay here with 2 guards. First sign of trouble, you go to the panic room. Deal. Thursday night arrived too quickly and not fast enough. I sat in Luca's office, headset on, watching security feeds from cameras his people had planted. 5 men in tactical gear moved through Riverside's parking lot at 11 p.m., silent as ghosts. Luca's voice came through clear and low. Dmitri, we're at the south entrance. Rachel, is this the door by the billing office? I pulled up my mental map. Yes. Card reader, but it's old. Should be easy to bypass. Copy. Sounds of electronic manipulation, then a soft click. We're in. For the next 20 minutes, I guided them through corridors I'd walked dozens of times, pointing out cameras, suggesting routes. They moved with professional efficiency, reaching the records office without incident. Fake wall, you said. Where? Luca's breathing was controlled, professional. North side, behind the filing cabinets. There's a seam if you look close. Pressure release on the left side about 4 feet up. Rustling sounds, then a quiet exclamation. Got it. Nicely done, Doctor. Morgan. They accessed the servers, Dmitri working his magic remotely to download years of files. But then a complication. A guard appeared, making an unscheduled round. My heart stopped as I watched the camera feed. Luca signaled his team. They melted into shadows. The guard walked past, oblivious, and continued down the hallway. "Clear," Luca whispered. "Dmitri, how much longer?" 90 seconds. Those seconds stretched like hours. But the download completed, and Luca's team extracted as smoothly as they'd entered, leaving no trace except missing digital files the clinic wouldn't notice for days. Back at the penthouse, Luca found me still in his office, adrenaline making my hands shake. He pulled off his tactical vest, set his weapon aside with careful precision. "You were invaluable tonight," he said. "Saved us at least 15 minutes. The guard. You could have, but didn't." He moved closer, and I could smell the night air on him, cold and clean. "You asked for minimal harm. I gave my word." We stood too close in the dim office, and suddenly I was aware of him in ways I'd been carefully avoiding. The way his t-shirt clung to his shoulders, the intensity in his dark eyes, the fact that he'd kept his promise even when violence would have been easier. "Thank you," I whispered. His hand rose, hesitated, then touched my cheek with unexpected gentleness. "You're stronger than you think, Rachel." The moment stretched, charged with possibility and danger. Then footsteps approached, and we stepped apart like teenagers caught by parents. Dmitri entered with a laptop, ready to review the stolen files. But something had shifted between us, subtle as the baby growing in my womb, but just as inevitable. And as I watched Luca work through the night, building the case that would destroy the clinic that had violated us both, I realized I was in far more danger than I'd thought. Not from Albanian criminals or bullets or captivity, but from the man who'd become something more than my captor, something I couldn't name yet, but felt growing with the same certainty as the heartbeat we'd heard together. The data from Riverside Fertility painted a picture more disturbing than I'd imagined. Dmitri spent 2 days combing through files, and what he found made my stomach turn. Dozens of sample switches over 3 years. Politicians, business executives, judges, all carefully selected targets, their genetic material swapped with samples from men the Krasniki family could manipulate or control. A blackmail operation masquerading as a fertility clinic. My case was just one thread in a massive web of corruption. Luca worked around the clock, building a case file for his FBI contact, a woman named Agent Sarah Mitchell, who apparently owed him enough favors to look the other way on how he'd acquired the evidence. I watched him from my corner of his office, supposedly reviewing veterinary journals but actually studying him, the way he rubbed his temples when stressed, how he rolled his shoulders to ease tension, the soft Italian he muttered when frustrated. We'd been living together for 6 weeks now. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped seeing just the criminal who'd kidnapped me. Now I saw the man who brought me ginger tea without asking when morning sickness hit, who'd installed a reading chair by the window because he'd noticed me standing there for hours, who spoke gently to his people but expected absolute competence. Dangerous thoughts for a captive. But I was 14 weeks pregnant with his child, and pretending I felt nothing seemed increasingly pointless. "Rachel," his voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Agent Mitchell wants Dr. Krasniki picked up tonight. She's got a warrant ready, but I convinced her to let us question him first." "Off the books." My pulse jumped. "You're going after him?" "Yes. He's the key to the whole operation, and his cousin Arben runs the Albanian side. If we can extract information about their structure, leadership, safe houses..." He trailed off, reading my expression. "What?" "I want to be there when you question him." "Absolutely not. Luca, listen to me." I stood, crossing to his desk. That man violated my body. Used me like I was nothing more than a pawn. I deserve to face him. It's too dangerous. If something goes wrong during extraction, then I stay in the vehicle, surrounded by your people. I planted my hands on his desk, leaning forward. But I need this. I need to hear him explain why he thought he had the right to weaponize my pregnancy. He studied me for a long moment, jaw tight. I could see the war in his eyes, protectiveness versus understanding. Finally, he exhaled roughly. "You stay in the SUV with Matteo and Dante. Bulletproof glass, engine running. Any trouble and they drive you straight back here." "Agreed." "And you wear a vest." His tone left no room for negotiation. "Fine." He made the call, setting plans in motion. 3 hours later, we were loading into vehicles as night fell over Boston. The bulletproof vest fit awkwardly over my small bump, but Mateo adjusted it with surprising gentleness. "You sure about this?" Luca asked one more time as I climbed into the SUV. "I'm sure." The drive took 30 minutes, heading to an industrial area near the harbor that smelled of salt and oil. Abandoned warehouses lined the street, perfect for activities you didn't want witnesses to. Dr. Krasnicki's car was already there, parked outside a building with broken windows. Luca's intel had tracked him to this meeting with his cousin. "Stay here," Luca ordered, then disappeared into the darkness with his team. Waiting was torture. I sat between Mateo and Dante, both armed and alert, listening to radio chatter I couldn't fully follow. 10 minutes, 15. Then Luca's voice, clear and satisfied. "We have him, bringing him to the South Warehouse." The SUV rolled forward, stopping near a different building. Through the windshield, I watched as Luca's men brought out Dr. Arben Krasnicki, the man I'd trusted with my fertility treatment. Hands zip-tied behind his back, blood trickling from his nose. He'd fought then. Good. They took him inside. Luca returned to the vehicle, opened my door. He's secured. "If you're doing this, it's now." I climbed out on shaking legs, let him guide me toward the warehouse. The interior was mostly empty, except for support columns, and in the center, under harsh portable lights, Dr. Krasnicki tied to a chair. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Ms. Morgan." His accent was thicker than I remembered. "You're alive. I heard you'd been taken by the man whose child I'm carrying. Thanks to you." My voice came out stronger than I felt. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Something flickered across his face. Fear, yes, but also calculation. He was still looking for angles, ways to manipulate the situation. "It was business," he said. "Nothing personal. You were chosen because you fit the profile. Single, professional, desperate enough for a baby that you wouldn't ask too many questions." The casual cruelty of it hit like a physical blow. Luca's hand touched the small of my back, steadying. "Who ordered the switch?" Luca asked, voice deadly soft. "Your cousin Agron?" Krasnicki's silence was answer enough. Luca nodded to one of his men, who produced a tablet showing the evidence they'd compiled. Sample logs, financial transfers, communications. The doctor's face went ashen as he realized how thoroughly they'd unraveled his operation. "The FBI has all of this," Luca said. "Your clinic is finished. Your medical license gone. Prison is guaranteed. But how long you stay there, how many additional charges get filed, that depends on what you tell us now. I want immunity, a deal. You're not in a position to negotiate." Luca leaned forward. "Where is Agron Krasnicki? Where does he operate from?" The doctor laughed, bitter and sharp. "You think I'd give up my cousin? He'd kill my entire family. He's already planning to kill you." Luca pulled up something on his phone, turned it toward Krasnicki. "Intercepted communication from this morning. Agron considers you a liability after the Brookline attack failed. He's cleaning house, eliminating anyone who could connect him to illegal activities." I watched blood drain from the doctor's face as he read whatever Luca was showing him. His hands clenched, plastic zip ties cutting into his wrists. "Lynn," he finally said, voice breaking. "There's a compound in Lynn near the harbor. Fortified guards. That's where Agron runs things." Luca gestured to Dmitri, who began typing furiously on a laptop. "Address." Krasnicki gave it, along with details about security, routines, personnel. Information spilled out of him like water from a cracked dam. I listened to him describe the organization that had turned my baby into a bargaining chip. The cold business calculations behind choosing me. How they'd planned to take me during my honeymoon in St. Lucia, an island small enough that disappearing me would be simple. "And what was the endgame?" I asked. My turn to step forward. "After you kidnapped me. What was supposed to happen?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Hold you until the baby was born. Use the child to force Valentasi to surrender territory. Then," he trailed off, "then kill me." Statement, not question. "Because I'd seen your faces, knew your operation." His silence confirmed it. I'd been dead from the moment they switched those samples. A temporary incubator for leverage, nothing more. Rage filled me, white-hot and cleansing. You don't get to avoid consequences by cooperating now. You made me into a weapon, turned my baby into a target before they even existed. That's unforgivable. I'm sorry," he whispered. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. Just business doesn't make it better." Luca's voice cut through like a blade. "It makes it worse. You weren't even angry, weren't driven by revenge or passion. You did this for money and power, with calculation and forethought. That's what makes you irredeemable." He signaled to his men. "Agent Mitchell is waiting 6 blocks away. Deliver him with our compliments and the evidence files." As they hauled Krasniki to his feet, he looked at me one last time. "The baby. Is it healthy?" The question was so unexpected, so bizarre given everything, that I actually laughed. "Why would you care?" "Because I'm still a doctor. That matters to me, even if you don't believe it." "Yes," I said coldly. "The baby is healthy. No thanks to you." They took him away. Luca and I stood alone in the empty warehouse, the lights casting harsh shadows. My hands were trembling, adrenaline crash hitting hard. "You shouldn't have seen that," Luca said quietly. "The interrogation, the violence, that's my world, not yours. My world ended 6 weeks ago." I turned to face him. "This is our world now. Yours, mine, and this baby's. I need to understand all of it, even the ugly parts." He stepped closer, and I could see the concern etched in his features. "I don't want you to become hard, to lose the softness that makes you who you are, and I don't want you to face everything alone." The words came from somewhere deep and honest. "You've protected me, kept your promises. Let me be more than a responsibility you guard." "Rachel," my name was rough on his tongue. "This isn't Stockholm Syndrome or forced proximity making you feel—" "Don't." I pressed my fingers to his lips, silencing him. "Don't tell me what I feel. I know the difference between gratitude and genuine connection, between survival instinct and actual emotion." His hand came up to cover mine, pressing it against his mouth. The kiss he placed on my palm was gentle, questioning. I answered by closing the distance between us, rising on my toes to reach him. The kiss was nothing like I'd expected. Soft, almost reverent, his hands framing my face like I was something precious. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. "This is complicated," he whispered. "Everything about us is complicated." I smiled despite the chaos. "But the baby is real. These feelings are real. And I'm tired of pretending otherwise. If we do this, really do this, there's no going back." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "You'll be in my world permanently. All the danger, all the darkness, I'm already in it." I placed his hand on my small bump. "We both are. So either we face it together, or we're both alone while standing next to each other." He kissed me again, deeper this time, and I felt the shift between us solidify into something undeniable. When we finally pulled apart, his smile was small but genuine. Together then, together, we left the warehouse hand in hand. And for the first time since my wedding day exploded, I felt like I was walking toward something instead of running away. The SUV waited, Matteo and Dante carefully not noticing how close Luca and I stood. On the drive back to the penthouse, his hand stayed wrapped around mine, thumb tracing absent patterns on my wrist. Whatever came next, whatever dangers the Krasniki still posed, we'd face it as partners. Not captor and captive. Not just genetic parents, but something even more powerful. 8 weeks transformed everything. The morning I woke at 20 weeks pregnant, the world felt different. Softer, maybe. Or I'd finally stopped fighting against the current and learned to swim. Luca was already awake, sitting by the window with coffee and his tablet, reading through reports in the gray pre-dawn light. He did this most mornings, dealing with business before I stirred, trying to keep the darker parts of his world separate from what we were building together. I watched him from the bed, appreciating the strong line of his shoulders, the way early light caught in his dark hair. We'd been sharing this room for 3 weeks now, a gradual migration that started with him falling asleep in the chair by my bed after I'd had nightmares, progressing to him actually joining me under the covers. Slow and careful, both of us terrified of breaking whatever fragile thing we'd created. I can feel you staring, he said without looking up, amusement in his voice. Maybe I like looking at you. He glanced over, that small smile I'd learned to treasure appearing. How are you feeling? Good. Better than good, actually. I pushed myself up, and movement inside made me pause. There it was again, like bubbles or butterflies. Luca, come here. He was across the room in seconds, sitting on the bed with careful attention to not jostle me. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Give me your hand. I placed it on my stomach, pressing firmly. We waited in silence for a moment. Then it happened again. A distinct flutter, pushing against his palm. His eyes went wide. Is that the baby? First time I've really felt movement. Tears prickled my eyes, hormones making me emotional. That's our son. Our son. Dr. Foster had revealed the sex 2 weeks ago during the 20-week anatomy scan. A boy, healthy and active, measuring perfectly. Luca had gone silent when she'd told us, processing the weight of raising a male child in his world. All the expectations, the dangers, the legacy he'd inherit. Now, feeling his son move for the first time, Luca's expression was unguarded wonder. He's real. Very real. And apparently already practicing for soccer. I laughed as another flutter came, stronger this time. He leaned down, pressing a kiss to my stomach, then to my lips. Good morning to both of you. These moments were what sustained me through the continued reality of our situation. Dr. Kresnicki was in federal custody. The clinic shut down permanently, but Agron Kresnicki remained at large despite Luca's efforts to locate him. The Albanian boss had gone to ground after his cousin's arrest, and the uncertainty kept Luca's security protocols tight. I was still a prisoner, just a willing one now. My gilded cage came with a man I was falling dangerously close to loving. The morning passed normally. I consulted remotely on a case involving a sick snow leopard at the zoo. Luca handled his various business interests from the office. We'd developed comfortable domesticity, strange as that sounded. Lunch together, discussing baby names. Afternoon walks on the penthouse's private terrace, his hand protective on my lower back. At 5 p.m., I was reading when an explosion shattered the peace. The entire building shook. Glass rained from somewhere below. Alarms screamed to life, shrill and panicked. Luca appeared in the doorway, already armed, face set in grim lines I hadn't seen since Brookline. Car bomb, front entrance. He pulled me up, grabbed a go bag from the closet. We're evacuating. Now. How did they find us? I don't know, but we're not staying to ask questions. He led me toward the back hallway where a service elevator waited. Matteo and 2 other guards already in position. This goes to the parking garage. Vehicles ready. We crowded into the elevator, descending rapidly. My heart hammered against my ribs. One hand pressed protectively over my bump. The baby kicked, responding to my adrenaline. I'm scared too, I thought. The parking garage was chaos. Residents evacuating, security personnel trying to maintain order. Luca's SUV waited by the emergency exit, engine running. He hustled me toward it, guards forming a protective box. Then the second explosion hit. This one was closer, massive, tearing through the garage's south wall with a roar of fire and concrete. The shockwave threw me forward into Luca, who caught me and kept us both upright through sheer force of will. Debris rained down, a chunk of concrete smashing the windshield of a nearby car. Move! Luca shoved me into the SUV, climbed in after me. Matteo was already in the driver's seat, punching the gas before the door fully closed. We burst through the emergency exit as a third explosion rocked the building behind us. In the rearview mirror, I watched smoke pour from the structure we'd called home. People streamed onto the street, fire trucks approaching with sirens wailing. They really wanted us dead, I said, voice shaking. They want me dead, Luca corrected grimly. You're collateral damage they're willing to accept. Matteo drove with controlled urgency through Boston streets, following evasive patterns Luca directed. No one spoke except to give directions. The magnitude of the attack was sinking in. 3 coordinated explosions meant planning, resources, willingness to kill dozens of innocent people just to get to one man. Where are we going? I finally asked. Brookline. The mansion's been rebuilt with upgraded security. Luca was on his phone. barking orders in Italian. It's the most defensible location I have. 25 minutes later, we pulled through gates I'd last seen 6 weeks ago. The house rose before us, restored to its former glory but with subtle differences. More cameras, reinforced windows, guard posts that hadn't existed before. Luca had transformed it into a fortress. Inside, the familiar layout brought strange comfort. Mrs. Russo appeared, taking my bag with practiced efficiency. "Your room is ready, Ms. Morgan." Same as before. But I didn't want the same as before. "I'm staying with Luca." He looked at me, surprised, then nodded. "Second floor. Master suite." We climbed the restored staircase. The master bedroom was large, decorated in masculine tones of navy and gray, but Luca immediately began adjusting things. Opening curtains to show me the view, checking the attached bathroom, ensuring I was comfortable. "Luca?" I caught his hand, stilling his nervous energy. "Sit with me. Please." We sat on the edge of the bed, and I could feel the tension radiating from him. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "This is exactly what I feared. You. Caught in crossfire, in danger because of me. Because of Agron Krasniki," I corrected. "This started with him, not you. But it continues because of my refusal to give him what he wants." His jaw clenched. I could end this. Surrender the port territory, walk away from that revenue stream. And then what? He sees that violence works, demands more next time. "Luca, you can't negotiate with people who just tried to kill dozens of innocent people to get to you." "I know." He pressed his palms against his eyes. "But watching that building explode, knowing you were inside, feeling my son move this morning and thinking I might lose both of you before he's even born." I wrapped my arms around him, pulling him close. "You didn't lose us. We're here. We're safe." He buried his face in my neck, and I felt his control fracture. This man who'd seemed unbreakable was shaking against me, fear finally overwhelming the walls he'd maintained. I held him, running my fingers through his hair, whispering reassurances. "I can't lose you," he said against my skin. "Either of you. I don't know when it happened, but you've become everything. I love you too." The words were easy, natural. I'd been feeling them for weeks without the courage to say them. Terror had a way of burning away hesitation. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes, searching for certainty. "You mean that?" "Yes. I know it's complicated and probably unhealthy and definitely not what I imagined when I agreed to marry Derek." I touched his face, feeling the rough stubble. "But it's real. What I feel for you is the most real thing in my life right now." He kissed me with something close to desperation, and I met him with equal need. We fell back onto the bed together, careful of my growing belly, hands mapping familiar territory made urgent by how close we'd come to losing everything. Later, wrapped in sheets with his hand protective over our son, I asked the question I'd been avoiding. "What happens now?" "Now?" He kissed my shoulder. "Now I stop being reactive." Agron made his move, showed his hand. He's willing to kill indiscriminately, burn entire buildings. That tells me he's desperate. And desperate men make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The kind that get them caught. His voice went cold, in a way that reminded me exactly who I'd fallen in love with. "I'm done waiting for him to come to us. It's time to go hunting." I should have been horrified. Should have argued for legal solutions, for peace. But I thought about the people who'd been in that building. The family of 4 I'd seen in the lobby yesterday. The elderly man who always held the elevator door for me. All potential casualties of Agron's vendetta. "What do you need from me?" I asked instead. He looked at me for a long moment. "I need you safe. Here, protected. With our son." His hand flexed on my stomach. "Let me handle the darkness. We're partners, remember? You said together. Rachel, I'm not asking to be in the field, but don't shut me out of the planning, the strategy. Don't go back to treating me like cargo you're protecting." I shifted to face him fully. "I'm smart. I'm invested in the outcome, and I'm carrying the future heir to whatever empire you're building. Use me." Pride flickered in his eyes. "You're terrifying when you're determined, do you know that? I'm a mother now. Even before he's born, I'm his mother. And I will burn the world down to keep him safe." I kissed him softly. "Show me how we end this." He did. Over the next hours, he laid out his organization's structure. the intelligence they'd gathered, the various options for locating Agron Krasniki. I listened, asked questions, and slowly began to see the strategy forming. Not just a hunt, but a trap, using Agron's desperation against him, drawing him out where Luca's people could end this permanently. It was brutal. It was necessary. And it was the only way our son would grow up without this threat hanging over him. When exhaustion finally claimed me near midnight, I drifted off with Luca's arm around me, our son kicking gently between us, and plans for violence dancing through my head like lullabies. I should have been disturbed by how easily I'd adapted to this world. But survival demanded adaptation, and love demanded protection, so I'd become whatever I needed to be to keep my family safe, even if that meant becoming someone I wouldn't have recognized 6 months ago, standing in a wedding dress and believing my biggest problem was lack of passion in my marriage. That woman was gone, burned away by gunfire and car bombs and the fierce love growing in my chest alongside my child. In her place stood someone harder, someone dangerous, someone worthy of standing beside Luca Valentasi and calling him partner. And tomorrow, we'd start hunting. 4 weeks in the Brookline mansion passed with military precision. Luca's people gathered intelligence while I grew larger and more determined. At 24 weeks, our son was active enough that Luca could feel him kick from across the room when I sat certain ways, life persisting despite the violence circling us. The break came from an unexpected source. One of Agron Krasniki's lieutenants, a man named Valmir, reached out through back channels requesting protection in exchange for information. He was tired of the escalating violence, tired of working for a boss who'd become increasingly erratic and willing to sacrifice his own people. Luca arranged the meeting with characteristic caution, but what Valmir revealed changed everything. Agron wasn't in Lynn anymore. He'd relocated to a warehouse compound in Chelsea after the seaport bombing, paranoid that his previous location had been compromised. More importantly, he was planning another attack, this time targeting the mansion directly with enough firepower to level it completely. When? Luca asked, voice deadly calm. 3 days. Maybe 4. Valmir looked haunted. He's bringing in specialists from overseas, Russians. They don't care about collateral damage. After Valmir left with protection detail assigned, Luca and I stood in his study looking at maps of Chelsea. The warehouse was fortified, surrounded by Agron's people. A direct assault would be costly and might fail. We needed him to come to us, but on our terms. The gala, I said suddenly. Luca looked up. What gala? New England Aquarium is hosting their annual conservation fundraiser next week. I was invited to speak 6 months ago, before everything happened. I pulled up the email on my tablet, forwarded from my old account that Dimitri monitored. It's a public event, lots of witnesses, but also lots of isolated areas in the aquarium itself. If Agron thinks I'll be there, vulnerable and visible, he won't be able to resist. Luca studied the invitation, mind clearly calculating angles. But Rachel, using you as bait while you're 6 months pregnant, is exactly why he'll believe it. I'm supposed to be in hiding, terrified. If I suddenly appear at a public event, it looks like arrogance or stupidity. Either way, he'll come. I moved to stand beside him, pointing at the aquarium's layout. The deep ocean exhibit has limited access points. We control the environment, have your people positioned as guests and staff. He walks into our trap instead of us walking into his. He was quiet for a long moment, and I could see the war in his expression. Every protective instinct screamed against it, but tactically it was sound. Finally, he nodded. Heavy security. Bulletproof vest under your clothes. Extraction plan if anything goes wrong. And at the first sign of real danger, you leave. No arguments. Agreed. The next 3 days were intense preparation. Dimitri coordinated with aquarium security. Luca's people infiltrated as caterers and custodial staff. I rehearsed my presentation on sea turtle conservation, a topic I actually cared about despite it being cover for an assassination plot. The cognitive dissonance was dizzying. Dr. Foster came to check on me and the baby the day before the gala, concerned about stress levels. Your blood pressure is elevated, she said, frowning at her readings. Not dangerously so, but I'd prefer you resting, not attending public events. I need to do this, I told her, for my son's future. so he can grow up without people trying to kill his father. She looked between Luca and me, recognition settling in her eyes. You're using yourself as bait. I'm ending a threat, I corrected. There's a difference. She didn't look convinced, but didn't argue further. After examining our son and pronouncing him healthy despite my elevated stress, she packed her equipment. Be careful, Rachel. That baby needs his mother. He needs both parents, I replied. That's what I'm fighting for. The night of the gala arrived with unseasonable warmth for September. I dressed in a flowing emerald gown that accommodated my bump while hiding the thin bulletproof vest Luca had commissioned specially. Makeup covered the shadows under my eyes. Jewelry glittered at my throat. I looked like a woman without a care, not someone walking into potential crossfire. Luca wore a tailored suit that concealed his weapon, hair styled back, every inch the legitimate businessman attending a charity function. We'd arrived separately, maintaining the fiction that I was here alone, vulnerable. The aquarium at night was otherworldly. Massive tanks glowed with bioluminescent life, casting rippling light across hundreds of guests in formal wear. I moved through the crowd toward the presentation area, hyper-aware of Luca's people positioned throughout. Matteo was dressed as a waiter. Dante posed as someone's date. At least 10 others I'd been briefed on. All armed, all ready. My presentation went smoothly, despite my racing heart. 20 minutes on conservation efforts, rehabilitation programs I'd worked with, the importance of protecting marine ecosystems. Applause followed, questions from genuinely interested attendees. Normal people living normal lives, unaware of the violence simmering beneath the surface of their evening. Afterward, I circulated through the cocktail reception, accepting congratulations, discussing veterinary medicine with curious guests, all while watching. Waiting. He came during the second hour. I spotted the recognition in Matteo's subtle hand signal. 3 men entering through the main entrance, moving with purpose. One of them matched photos I'd studied. Agron Krasniki, older than his cousin. Hard-faced and radiating controlled violence. I drifted toward the deep ocean exhibit as planned, a massive cylindrical tank that rose 3 stories, filled with sharks and rays. The area was less crowded, darker. Perfect hunting ground or perfect trap, depending on perspective. 2 of Agron's men followed me. I pretended not to notice, stopping to admire a hammerhead shark gliding past the glass. Behind me, I heard their approach. Then Luca's people moved. It happened fast. The 2 men were grabbed, dragged into a service corridor before they could react or cry out. Weapons confiscated, hands restrained. I kept my position, the visible target, waiting for the primary threat. Agron appeared from the opposite direction, blocking my retreat. His hand was inside his jacket, no doubt on a weapon. We stared at each other across 15 feet of polished floor, the shark tank casting shifting shadows. Rachel Morgan, he said, accent thick. You're either very brave or very stupid. Neither. I'm just tired of running. I kept my voice steady despite my hammering heart. Tired of watching you terrorize innocent people because you want my child. That child is leverage. Worth millions in territory and shipping rights. He stepped closer. Come with me quietly. No one else gets hurt. That wasn't the deal in the Seaport District. How many people died in your bombing? 20? 30? Anger fueled my courage. You're willing to kill anyone to get what you want. Business requires sacrifice. Another step. You should understand that by now. Being Valentasi's whore. The word struck like a slap, but I held my ground. I'm not his whore. I'm his partner. And you made a mistake coming here tonight. You think you've trapped me? He laughed, pulling his weapon. I have 6 men in this building. More outside. You're the one trapped. Are you sure about those numbers? Luca's voice came from behind Agron, cold and final. Because we've already neutralized 4 of your people. The other 2 are currently being escorted to federal custody. It's just you now. Agron spun, weapon rising, but he was surrounded. Luca directly behind him, Matteo and Dante flanking, 4 other guards cutting off all escape routes. The aquarium's public areas were distant enough that no civilians would hear or see what happened next. You're outplayed, Luca said softly. Lower the weapon or die here. Your choice. For a moment, I thought Agron would choose death. Saw the calculation in his eyes, the pride warring with survival instinct. Then he slowly lowered the gun, let it clatter to the floor. "Smart," Luca said. Matteo moved in, securing Agron's hands behind him with practiced efficiency. "Now you're going to tell me where your remaining operations are. Who's still loyal to you? What resources you have left?" "Everything." "Go to hell." Luca smiled, and it was terrifying. "We can do this the easy way or the interesting way. I'm patient." They started to take him toward a service exit, but Agron's eyes locked on me. "You think you've won? That child will grow up in blood. He'll see what his father really is. And it will destroy him. Better that than growing up kidnapped by you," I replied. "Better anything than your version of the world." Luca moved between us, blocking Agron's view of me. "Get him out of here." Interrogation site beta. He turned to me as they dragged Agron away, expression softening. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Is it over?" "Not yet." He took my elbow gently, guiding me toward another exit. "I need to question him, find out who else might continue his operations. But yes, the main threat is neutralized. Our son can grow up without this hanging over him." We slipped out through kitchen passages, avoiding the main event still happening above. In the SUV waiting at the service entrance, I finally let myself collapse against the seat, adrenaline crash hitting hard. Luca climbed in beside me, pulled me close. "You were incredible," he said into my hair. "Terrifying and perfect." I was terrified, I admitted. But it worked. It worked. He pulled back enough to kiss me gently. "Thank you for being brave enough to see this through." We rode back to Brookline in silence, holding hands, the weight of the evening settling over us. Hours later, after Luca returned from interrogating Agron and handed him to federal authorities with all the evidence needed to put him away forever, we lay in bed together. Our son kicked against Luca's palm, already responding to his father's voice. "What happens now?" I asked. The same question from weeks ago, but with different weight. "Now we live," he kissed my shoulder. "Build a life that's more than survival. Figure out how to be actual parents instead of people united by crisis." That sounds nice. I laced my fingers with his. Domestic and boring. I don't think we're capable of boring. His hand covered our son protectively. But we can try peaceful. 2 weeks later, Derek showed up requesting a meeting. I met him at a cafe in Cambridge, neutral ground with 2 of Luca's guards watching from a distance. His eyes widened immediately when he saw me, visibly pregnant now, 6 months along. Before he spoke, a distance. He looked thinner, older. The news had covered the seaport bombing, the arrest of Albanian organized crime figures. He'd put the pieces together. "I wanted to see if you're all right," he said, voice careful. "After everything, I'm alive, pregnant, getting married to the father of my child. Direct and honest. How are you?" "Processing." He stirred his coffee without drinking it. "I thought he'd kidnapped you. Coerced you into everything. He saved my life." I touched my bump gently. "And yes, it started as captivity, but it became something else. Something real." Derek absorbed that quietly. "Do you love him?" "Yes." No hesitation. "More than I thought possible." He nodded slowly. "Then I'm glad you're safe. Glad you found something genuine, even if it destroyed what we had. What we had was never real," I said gently. "We were building security, not passion. You deserve someone who loves you completely. That was never me." "I know." A sad smile touched his face. "Goodbye, Rachel. Have a good life." "You too." I watched him walk away, closing the final chapter of my old existence. When Luca appeared beside me, hand warm on my shoulder, I leaned into him without reservation. "Ready?" he asked. "For what?" "I was thinking we should make it official sooner rather than later." He pulled out a small velvet box, opened it to reveal a simple platinum band with a single emerald. "Marry me. Really marry me this time. Just us and people who matter." I looked from the ring to his face, seeing vulnerability beneath the confidence. "Yes." He slipped it on my finger, kissed me right there in the cafe with curious strangers watching. And for the first time in 6 months, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The garden looked completely different from the last time I'd stood here. 8 months ago, this lawn had been torn by vehicle tires, stained with blood, hosting the destruction of my planned wedding. Now it was pristine, decorated with white flowers and simple elegance. 30 people sat in chairs facing an arch woven with ivy and roses. People who mattered. People we actually wanted to witness this. I stood in the mansion's library, watching through the window as guests arrived. 36 weeks pregnant, moving required strategy and assistance. The wedding dress had been custom-made by a designer who understood that elegance and a massive belly could coexist. Champagne silk that flowed over my bump, capped sleeves, simple lines, hair loose and natural because Luca liked it that way. The emerald engagement ring caught light as I adjusted my dress one more time. "You look beautiful," Mrs. Russo said from the doorway, tears already forming. She'd become something like a mother figure over these months, teaching me Italian phrases and how Luca took his coffee. He's a lucky man. I'm the lucky one. And I meant it. Against all odds, despite the violence and chaos and impossible circumstances, I'd found something real. Dr. Foster appeared, making one last check. Blood pressure is good. Baby's heartbeat is strong. Try not to stand for too long. And for the love of all that's holy, do not go into labor during your ceremony. I'll do my best. I touched my stomach where our son pressed against my ribs, always active during important moments. Hear that? Stay put for a few more hours. Matteo appeared at the door, looking uncomfortable in a formal suit. "It's time, Ms. Morgan, or soon to be Mrs. Valentasi." I took a deep breath, accepted his offered arm, and walked through the mansion toward the garden. The late afternoon light was golden. Perfect. Music played softly, acoustic guitar covering a song I didn't recognize but found beautiful. Guests turned as I appeared, but I only had eyes for Luca. He stood beneath the arch in a charcoal suit, hands clasped in front of him, expression unguarded in a way few people ever saw. Vulnerable and fierce simultaneously. As I walked toward him, his eyes never left mine, and I could see everything in his face. Love, gratitude, disbelief that we'd actually made it here. I reached him, took his offered hands. They were warm and steady, grounding. The officiant, a judge who owed Luca favors but seemed genuinely moved, began. "We're gathered today to witness the union of Rachel Morgan and Luca Valentasi, two people who found each other in extraordinary circumstances and chose love despite every reason not to." That was one way to describe kidnapping turning into romance, I thought, biting back a smile. "They've written their own vows," the judge continued. Luca went first, clearing his throat. "Rachel, 6 months ago, I took you from a wedding and thought I was just protecting an asset. A biological connection to a child I never planned to have, but you refused to be just that. You fought me, challenged me, forced me to see you as a person instead of a problem to solve." His voice roughened with emotion. "You made me want to be better than what I was raised to be. You gave me hope that maybe I could be a father, a husband, something more than a criminal wearing expensive suits. I promised to protect you and our son, to honor your strength, to listen when you call me on my bullshit, and to love you for the rest of my life, however long or short that may be." Tears streamed down my face. Hormones made me cry at commercials lately, but this was different. This was everything. My turn. I squeezed his hands, found my voice. "Luca, I should hate you for destroying my wedding, kidnapping me, dragging me into a world of violence I never asked for. And for a while I did. But somewhere between your fortress in Brookline and this garden, I fell in love with the man behind the reputation. You've been gentle when you could have been cruel, honest when you could have lied. You gave me choices when you could have just given orders. You see me, really see me, in a way I've never been seen before." I touched my belly. "Our son is growing up with a father who will move heaven and earth to keep him safe, who will teach him strength and honor. And I get to stand beside you both, not as a captive or an obligation, but as a partner. I promise to challenge you, support you, love you through whatever comes next. Even when you're being an overprotective pain in the ass." Laughter rippled through the guests. Luca smiled, that rare, full expression that transformed his entire face. The rings, the judge prompted. Mateo produced them. Simple platinum bands engraved on the inside with our son's due date. We slid them on each other's fingers with hands that trembled slightly. By the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I now pronounce you husband and wife. The judge grinned. You may kiss your bride, Mr. Valentasi. Luca cupped my face with both hands, thumb brushing away my tears, and kissed me with thorough sweetness. Our son kicked between us, making us break apart laughing. He approves, I said. Good, because it's too late to back out now. Luca kept his arm around my waist as we turned to face our guests, who were standing and applauding. The reception was simple. Dinner under string lights as evening fell. Toasts from Mateo, who told embarrassing stories about Luca that I stored away for later use. From Dr. Foster, who joked about the medical impossibility of our relationship working. From Dimitri, who'd apparently bet money that we'd kill each other within the first month. I sat beside Luca at the head table, his hand never far from mine or my stomach. We didn't dance, too ungainly for that. But we swayed in place while music played, and people celebrated around us. Normal. Domestic. Everything I'd thought lost the day he'd crashed my first wedding. At 9 p.m., exhaustion hit like a wall. Luca saw it immediately, made our excuses, and guided me inside. We're supposed to stay until the end. I protested weakly. It's our wedding. We make the rules. He swept me up into his arms, carrying me up the stairs despite my protests about his back. Luca, I weigh about 1,000 pounds right now. You weigh perfectly right for growing my son. He set me down gently in our bedroom, began carefully unfastening the back of my dress. How are you feeling? Tired? Happy? Terrified about becoming parents in 3 weeks? I stepped out of the dress, grateful to be free of its weight. Normal wedding night thoughts. He laughed, pulling back the covers so I could slide into bed. I don't think anything about us qualifies as normal. Fair point. I watched him undress, still appreciating the view after months of sharing this room. Come here. He climbed in beside me, pulling me close with practiced care for my bump. Our son kicked against his stomach, a conversation between father and child that didn't need words. Thank you, I said into the comfortable darkness. For what? Crashing my wedding, kidnapping me, protecting us, loving us. I turned my head to look at him. All of it. Even the terrible parts, because they led here. His hand traced patterns on my shoulder. I'm the one who should be thanking you. For not killing me in my sleep. For seeing past what I am to who I could be. Who you already are. I corrected. You just needed someone to point it out. We fell asleep, tangled together. Peaceful in a way that would have seemed impossible when this all started. 2 weeks later, at 3 a.m, contractions woke me. I lay there timing them for 20 minutes before shaking Luca awake. It's time. He went from asleep to completely alert in seconds, already reaching for his phone to call Dr. Foster. The carefully planned chaos began. Hospital bag grabbed, security team mobilized, vehicle brought around. By the time we reached Mass General, my contractions were 5 minutes apart and getting serious. Labor was nothing like I'd imagined. Longer, more painful, more intense. Luca stayed beside me through all of it, letting me crush his hand, murmuring encouragement in Italian and English, being exactly what I needed without me having to ask. 12 hours after arriving, at 3:17 p.m., Thomas Luca Valentasi entered the world screaming his displeasure at 8 pounds, 2 ounces. They placed him on my chest immediately, tiny and perfect, and ours. He's beautiful, Luca said, voice thick with wonder. He touched Thomas's tiny fist, which immediately wrapped around his finger. Look at him. I couldn't look away. Our son, the baby who'd started as a biological weapon and became the center of everything. Dark hair like his father. My nose. A face that was uniquely his. He stopped crying as skin-to-skin contact calmed him, little mouth working as he tried to figure out this bright, cold world. Hi, baby, I whispered. We've been waiting for you. The next few days were a blur of exhaustion and overwhelming love. Thomas feeding every 2 hours, learning to navigate parenthood's basics, visitors coming and going. Luca was revelation, utterly transformed by fatherhood. He changed diapers with focused concentration, rocked Thomas through fussy periods, sang Italian lullabies his mother had sung to him. We brought Thomas home to Brookline on a Tuesday afternoon. The nursery was ready, painted with a mural of exotic animals I'd commissioned, a safari theme for our improbable little family. That first night, we stood over his crib together, watching him sleep with the intensity of people who'd fought to give him a safe world. We did it, I said softly. He's here and safe and ours. We did. Luca pulled me against his side. Thank you. For him. For us. For everything. 6 months passed in a blur of sleepless nights and perfect moments. Thomas grew, thrived, developed a personality that was stubborn and sweet in equal measures. I opened a new veterinary practice specializing in exotic animal rehabilitation, working part-time while raising our son. Luca gradually transitioned more of his business interest to legitimate ventures, reducing the danger that came with his world. It wasn't perfect. Security remained necessary. There were still threats, still challenges, but we faced them together, partners in every sense. On a mild October evening, I stood in my clinic office holding Thomas while examining radiographs of a red-tailed hawk's wing. He babbled at the images, reaching for them with chubby hands. 6 months old and already curious about everything. Your mama helps birds, I told him. Maybe someday you'll help them too. The clinic door opened and Luca appeared, early to pick us up. He crossed the room, kissed me, then took Thomas, who immediately grabbed his father's collar. How was your day? He asked. Good. Fixed a hawk's wing, consulted on a snake's respiratory infection, normal stuff. I began packing up. How was yours? Tedious meetings about shipping contracts. Legal shipping contracts, he emphasized with a smile. Very boring. Good. Boring is good. We drove home together, Thomas babbling in his car seat, discussing nothing important and everything that mattered. Dinner waiting at home, bedtime routines to navigate, a million tiny details that made up a life. Later, after Thomas was asleep and we sat on the terrace watching Boston's lights twinkle in the distance, I leaned against Luca's shoulder. Do you ever regret it? I asked. That day you crashed my wedding? He considered seriously. I regret the pain it caused you initially. The fear, the loss of choice. But the outcome? He turned to meet my eyes. Getting you, getting Thomas, building this life? No. I could never regret that. Good. I kissed him softly. Because I don't either. Even the terrible parts brought us here. Made us into this. We sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other in chaos and built something beautiful from the wreckage. Our son slept peacefully inside, unaware of the violence that had preceded his existence. He'd grow up knowing security, love, parents who'd move mountains to protect him. My wedding day had exploded into violence and impossible claims. A man I'd never met had declared me his, had pulled me from my planned life into his dangerous world. And somehow, impossibly, it had become the best thing that ever happened to me. Life had a strange way of working out, I thought, lacing my fingers through Luca's. We were an unlikely pair, built from kidnapping and biology and choices made under pressure. But love didn't care about circumstances. It just cared about truth. And the truth was simple. We were family. Imperfect, complicated, forged in fire. But ours. Completely and eternally ours.